Hey ladies, welcome to the Grit, Growth, Grace podcast. If we haven't met, my name is Anne Marie. I'm wife to James and mom of 4 beautiful kids, plus 1 miscarried baby, from 9 months up to 8 years. My hope is to help other women experience the postpartum period all the way up to the first year of baby's life as a time of grit, growth, and grace. This is episode 17. Hey lady, do you already know all about pelvic floor physical therapy? I love that even if they haven't seen one personally, most women nowadays seem at least familiar with pelvic floor PT, which is way different than when I started having babies 9 years ago. I love that pelvic floor physical therapy is becoming increasingly mainstream. Today, let's talk about who even needs to see a pelvic floor physical therapist, why it's important to choose your pelvic floor PT the way you would a therapist for counseling, and what to expect at your first visit. Spoiler alert, if you've given birth, you are a candidate for pelvic floor physical therapy, even if you gave birth via cesarean section. No matter how your baby came out, he or she challenged your pelvic floor for 9-ish months. That's no joke. You might be acutely aware of that because you're wearing panty liners to keep you from peeing yourself a little when you cough or laugh hard or jump, if you're back to jumping type activities. That's called urinary incontinence, and while it's quite common during pregnancy and postpartum, it is not normal. It indicates muscle weakness and, ta-da, it's fixable. A pelvic floor PT can help with that. A pelvic floor PT can also help with bowel leakage, which is a not so fun part of postpartum that we also don't like to talk about, but many women experience too. Or you might be experiencing diastasis recti, the ab separation that affects something like 95% of pregnant women to one degree or another. Ab separation during pregnancy is normal, but those muscles often need some direction and focused help to knit back together. A pelvic floor PT, you guessed it, can help with that. A pelvic floor PT can also help with pain during sex, which can be a postpartum mom's experience as well, especially depending on how her healing is going from any wounds or lacerations that she might have experienced during the labor and birthing process. Whatever your birth story, I invite you to get assessed by a pelvic floor physical therapist, which means a regular physical therapist who has undergone additional training and is specially equipped to help pregnant and postpartum moms with muscle weakness, incontinence of pee or poop, vaginal wound healing, painful sex, and even, if you had a C-section, surgical scar massage to promote healing, blood flow, and decrease pain. Once you decide you want to see a pelvic floor PT, this next step is crucial. I invite you to be just as discerning about your choice of pelvic floor PT as you would be about a therapist you would get counseling from. I sum this up as find a pelvic floor physical therapist with a voice like butter. There are 2 interconnected reasons it's important to find a therapist you connect with who is competent and gentle. I went to a therapist for the first time when my second child was 3 years old. 3 years old, yes. But I was having urinary incontinence with high-intensity workouts, and I'd heard that maybe pelvic floor physical therapy could help. I learned then, from that first physical therapist, that most women hold their stress in their pelvic floor. This is why Kegels to get stronger aren't the first or only answer for many women. The therapist told me many women keep their floor clenched to a degree all the time. You might already know about the jaw-pelvic floor connection. If your jaw is clenched, your pelvic floor typically is too. Maybe during labor you were told to do horse-lips or deep sounds instead of high-pitched sounds. That's because when you keep your jaw loose, your pelvic floor responds too. But you've already had your baby, right? You have, but it's highly possible that your jaw and pelvic floor are still holding your stress. I was taught to picture it like holding a weight with your arm at 40 degrees all the time. So not all the way up, not all the way down, but sort of like halfway in between. You're not lifting it all the way up, so you're not really strengthening your pelvic floor muscles. But you're also not laying it down, so it's getting stressed and strained because you're never relaxing it, allowing it to rest. Most women, I learned, actually need to learn how to relax their pelvic floor before they can learn to strengthen it with Kegels or other exercises. You want a pelvic floor PT with a voice like butter because you need to be able to relax your pelvic floor with them. Here's reason number 2, which takes the mystery out of what happens at your first appointment. The pelvic floor PT will assess your external strength, including muscles connected to your pelvic floor like your hips and your core, because it's all connected, but they will also assess you internally. Yes, that means they will do an internal exam to check the strength of your pelvic floor muscles that control your peeing and pooping. You need to find a pelvic floor PT you can trust because, of course, it's vulnerable to have an exam like that. And then to be comfortable enough to practice tightening and relaxing with somebody like that, you have to find somebody you can trust. One of the most helpful parts of pelvic floor PT, now that I've been through 3 different times, so once when my second child was around 3, like I said, that was the first time, and then after my 2 youngest, so my son who's going to be 3 in a couple months, and then my son who is, 14 months now. So one of the most helpful parts of pelvic floor PT has been biofeedback, meaning that you see electrical wave signals on a screen that show you the muscle tone in your pelvic floor. You can learn what relaxed feels like as you see the lines go down and what clenched feels like as you see the lines go up, and then you can learn to actually relax your pelvic floor. Biofeedback requires tiny electrodes with sensors on them, and they are placed via sticky patches on the sides of your buttocks. You heard me. It can be immensely helpful to get this feedback, but you need to be working with someone you can quite literally relax around. I saw an Instagram reel a while back that recommended checking a pelvic floor PT's nails, because if they're good at their job, their nails will be short and they won't have fake nails. Yes, that matters too, but that's the lowest common denominator or threshold or bar. Find someone you can trust. Other heads up notes for what to expect at your first appointment. The first assessment will last a full hour as they essentially put you through your paces, doing all the things they need to do to check your internal, like I said, and your external strength, including, like I mentioned before, your hip strength and core strength. And it's been fascinating to me to see how much I needed to strengthen, not just in my core, which of course isn't a surprise, especially with ab separation, but also in my hips after every baby. And part of that is due right to the relaxin that you've got pumping through your body during pregnancy, especially towards the end, so that your hips can widen and your pelvis can open for your baby to pass through. But then also, long after you give birth, you've still got that relaxin keeping things kind of loose and maybe actually weakening them to an extent needing to be tightened up. So that first assessment will last an hour, and they will give you exercises to work on, just like any other physical therapist would. You'll likely be recommended to come for 6 to 12 visits, and again, that's variable based on the woman, once a week or every other week, and they will last around 45 minutes each time. Some practical questions you might be wondering: when should I start going to pelvic floor PT? I love to go for an assessment at 6 weeks postpartum, before I resume workouts, particularly those with core exercises, because I don't want to worsen anything by doing more aggressive core work in particular, or jumping or running, etc., than I am actually ready for. Getting that baseline assessment of muscle strength or weakness can help you work out smarter, not harder, and definitely not too hard before you're ready. If you're planning for a 6-week postpartum appointment, call several weeks in advance. The more reputable a pelvic floor PT is, especially if there aren't many in your area, the higher the likelihood that she'll be booked weeks or even a month plus out. Should you go to pelvic floor PT after every baby? I sure do. Every pregnancy and birth is different, but all of them strain your body in different ways. This is a way to care for your body, to be in your best health, especially if you hope for more children in the future. In France, every new mom has access to 10 free pelvic floor PT sessions to help retrain her pelvic floor after baby. As a result, French women don't have near the problems we do with urinary leakage and other related postpartum issues. Do you need a referral? It depends on what state you live in. All you've got to do is Google pelvic floor PT referral and your state name, and you should easily figure out what your state's rules are. In my state, you don't require, or it doesn't require PT. You can just refer yourself. You could also Google a pelvic floor PT clinic near you and call them up and ask. Does insurance cover pelvic floor PT? Because let's be real, right? When it comes to getting help postpartum, oftentimes money is a factor. Maybe it's a big factor. In many cases, insurance will cover pelvic floor PT, but some clinics may not accept insurance, and you'll find that out when you call to schedule. If this is the case, and you have a health savings account, you can use your HSA funds to cover pelvic floor appointments. And if you're looking at the cost and thinking, no, I can't. Listen, I don't like spending money either. Saving money during postpartum, especially if you're on maternity leave from a job and are making no money or less money than usual, may be paramount. That'll be a whole separate episode. But here's the key thing to remember. We pay for what we value. You're prioritizing yourself and your health. I said in the intro episode for this podcast, your love is the light of your home. When you are well and well cared for, everyone else around you will be okay. Pelvic floor physical therapy, to the extent that you need it, and maybe you don't need very much of it, but it is a way you prioritize yourself, and it's not forever. 6 to 12 sessions, like I mentioned earlier, for most women, does not equal paying for pelvic floor PT for the rest of your life. Here's the other thing. We commit to the things we pay for. We commit to the things we pay for. If you and I aren't paying for pelvic floor PT, even if we love a good deal or a discount in general, how likely are we to prioritize those exercises we get sent home with? Sure, the exercises don't take an hour a day. They take perhaps 10 minutes at a time, maybe a bit less, 2 or maybe 3 times a day. Who can't find 20 minutes a day? Except that we often don't if we aren't paying, or if we aren't feeling some level of financial pinch. Not financial strain, but financial pinch. Another question. Can you bring your baby with you? Yes, you can bring your baby in their car seat or carrier, and I've done this. Keep in mind that if your baby starts crying, you as the mom will likely respond by, wait for it, tensing up your pelvic floor. If it's possible to leave your baby with someone for the appointment, I recommend that. Does pelvic floor PT go hand in hand with chiropractic care during postpartum? Maybe yes, maybe no. This is something to ask your PT and the chiropractor about when they worked with you for a session or 2. When I was pregnant with my fourth child, third living baby, I was in a serious car accident at 28 weeks pregnant. I went to chiropractic care regularly afterwards until birth, and then went occasionally during postpartum. I personally found that the relaxin pumping through my body postpartum, which remains to some extent in your system until whenever you stop breastfeeding, made my ligaments loose and my joints very clicky. I didn't need any further loosening, so I stopped the chiropractic visits and just did the pelvic floor PT to strengthen. One last thing you might be wondering. Couldn't you just YouTube pelvic floor exercises? In short, yes, you could do that. But where is your pelvic floor exactly? How will you know whether it's clenched or relaxed? And how do you know you're activating your core properly to repair your ab separation and not worsen it? A real-life person and biofeedback can help you learn to connect with your pelvic floor. At a minimum, going to several appointments and getting familiar with what your body feels like when it's clenched versus relaxed, and what proper mechanics for your exercises feel like may be enough to get you going on your own at home. When you are ready to go on your own, their Nourish, Move, Love channel on YouTube has great ab separation exercises and postpartum friendly workouts. There's your primer on pelvic floor PT, lady. I'd love for you to check out my friend April's website and Facebook page. She has her own pelvic floor PT clinic, and I love the resources that she shares there. Very accessible, bite-sized information, and she also includes a lot more information on other issues that can be treated as well, because of course pelvic floor PT is not limited to pregnant and postpartum women. pelvic floor PT is actually relevant to men, women, and children. So in the resources email for this episode, I will include April's website, her Facebook page, and then I've actually got 2 more articles to share with you. One's an interview actually with her for the organization that I work for, and it talks about what the full range is of conditions that can be treated with pelvic floor PT. So if you're not already on my email list, I would love for you to head over to postpartumonpurpose.com and get signed up for that so you can get resources from this week. What was the last thing I wanted to say? Let's see here. Oh yeah, okay, here we go. Next week, let's talk about getting back into exercise during postpartum, or how to start if you didn't grow up working out, but want to be your healthiest for this baby and your other kiddos. I'll talk to you then. If you have not already, I would love for you to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever player you use, Apple, Spotify. It makes a difference to how searchable this podcast is for other women. And I would, of course, love always for you to forward it on to somebody else as well. If you have feedback, I'd love to hear it. I'm all ears. I have a contact form through the website on Libsyn, which is the host for this, the Libsyn website. And then you can also reach me over on Instagram at gritgrowthgrace. And then once again, postpartumonpurpose.com is where you can sign up for the weekly email, so you get all of the resources from each week's episode delivered straight to your inbox. Take care.